and welcome to Bridge, candid conversations that envision a new future. Step with us into the edge of evolution as we explore the shifting thoughts, beliefs, and actions that are shaping our tomorrow. Now, join your hosts, Terry Angel, Sheila Cash, Mira Rubin, and Liz Williams for candid conversations that envision a new future.
Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of The Broader Edge. I'm Mira Rubin, and we have our other hosts here, Elizabeth Williams, Sheila Cash, and Terry Angel, and we're so excited to welcome you and invite you to join us in a conversation today about finding your tribe. So have you gone through life like you don't belong, or like you can't find that place or community that feels like home for you? Friends that you can really be yourself with and that get you? If you have, you're not alone, and it's time for our tribe to come together. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and we hope that you will join us. So hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
We're back.
We are.
So I thought it would be great to start out, and for those of you who are with us today or watching this at a later date, what we're going to be doing is cycling through where we each have the opportunity to pick a topic and host. And so that's why last week was Terry, and I have the privilege this week, and we'll be revolving as we continue through our times together. So I thought it would be great to start this conversation out with feeling the isolation that I believe that all of us have felt in our lives. I know for me, years ago, like a lot of years ago, when I was experiencing and having a really deep interest in transformation and awakening, I was very alone. Not only was I alone, but I was ostracized for my interest in things that most people there was no speaking for it. And now we're in a very, very different era, and the people that are watching us are part of our tribe, which is awesome, and we want to engage you with us. But I was wondering if you ladies want to chime in and say what it was like for you growing up, or in the beginning of your awakening to more spiritually oriented things or expanded consciousness, and what that was like for you in your lives.
You know, I have to say, Mira, that I'm just as you're speaking, I'm remembering when I really started getting into organics and organic foods. So that went on into, expanded consciousness. But at the time that I was looking into organic foods here in the DC area, I was actually in what would almost be considered a black market. It was a neighborhood co-op, and a few people would get together to buy these foods. And in social circles, people were afraid of organic foods, and they were very, questioning and very suspicious about it. At one point, an organic winery popped up, and people, nobody would even try. I would explain, it's just that there's no chemicals in it. That's all. But that was kind of, that was sort of the beginning. And so we're going back probably 40 years, 30, 35, 40 years on that. And then on it went, because I had, I was doing yoga from, back in the 70s, and that was considered to be suspicious. For many circles, you grow up in a small town in, Appalachia, and it was not West Coast. It wasn't, as progressive in many ways. And then that really did carry on, through the years into, the expanded consciousness and practices, even meditation. And I have to say, even now, this is such an epidemic for people still. My clients are going through this all the time with their families, with their friends, in marriages, and even with their jobs, which falls into this category as well, finding your tribe in your job and in your mission.
For sure, for sure. I love that you said that people were afraid of organic vegetables. It's like the chemicals were their own food group that we had to have. But how about you, Liz? What was it like for you?
My experience is different when I think about finding my tribe and what the challenges were. I think back more on my childhood, and I feel like, up until a certain age, you feel comfortable being who you are. I mean, a lot of people do. Until you enter, I feel like it's around 10, 11, and maybe in school, junior high, when you start to receive maybe criticism or teasing or whatever it is, and you decide that the teasing hurts so much that you'd rather change who you are than be authentically yourself. And so we spend then, our teenage years, and it depends on who we are, but, maybe into our 20s, kind of with this facade of, this is who I am because I can fit in. And eventually, I think most of us get to this point where we feel like, I don't want to fit in anymore. I just want to be authentically myself. And spirituality can be a huge piece of that. I want to be able to explore this. I want to be able to be honest about what I think, or the thoughts that I had growing up, or the practices that I had growing up are shifting for me. And I want to be honest and open about that. And it does result in changes in your friendships and your relationships, and it can be really uncomfortable. But I think we get to this point in life where we feel like, I would just rather be fully myself and alone almost than to have to pretend and be with people that I really just don't want to enjoy being with anymore. I don't have anything in common with. So for me, it was more kind of a natural progression in life. And then as time went on, just feeling like I just want to find people that I can talk to about things that interest me and be completely myself. And that's why we've talked about, Mary, being this group that we have here, we can finally just be completely authentic, talk about anything and realize that we're accepted and part of a tribe.
And Terry, you were communicating with angels from the time you were a kid, right?
Yeah, from my earliest memory. And nobody understood who I was talking to, what that was all about. They just thought I was crazy.
You're actually lucky you didn't get committed. You're lucky you didn't get committed, for real.
Oh, I know. Well, I grew up like Sheila in the Appalachian Mountains, so it was just like, she's the odd one. She's the one that talks to herself or talks to things that she can't see. But yeah, so that did something mentally to where I thought, okay, I'm the only one that does this. This must be something unique to me. And none of my other friends were spiritual. Nobody saw angels or talked even about angels. And then, later on in life, when I actually met other people that were like-minded, people that meditated, people that heard from their spirit guides and that could see spirit, I thought, wow, I'm not the only one. And so I did start to say, okay, let me just find those people. And so it was like a conscious thing of there has to be other people out there. Once I found meditation and really got into spirituality, I started finding those people that, we would talk about the same thing. And I wasn't the one off to the side talking to the angels all by myself anymore. But it was really difficult growing up, and that isolation, you can begin to understand what somebody goes through when they're ostracized and when they're the one that's odd and doing things that nobody else understands. So it was a really difficult time growing up.
Yeah, for me too. and lonely. And within my household, my household was like its own little war zone. You know, it was not a place that was receptive or nurturing to my spirit. You know, I think we can collectively say this is the black sheep tribe. You know?
I'll take that.
I'm curious with Mira and Terry in particular, at what age did you start to feel some acceptance, or like you were starting to find places where maybe you started to fit in? When did that happen for you?
Well, if I can go first, for me, it was in my 30s. I lived through a horrible marriage where he didn't even understand. You know, I had all this intuition, I had all these gifts, and I couldn't even talk to my husband at that time. I couldn't even talk to him about it. And then it was after that marriage ended when I really did some soul searching, and I found meditation groups, and I found people that actually acknowledge that angels do exist, that there is a God, there is all this spirituality. That was it. It took me that long in this lifetime. It's been half of my life, you know, that I was living in that state of not being understood and not being able to talk to anybody about what I was experiencing. And I would write about it. You know, it would come out of me in expression through the written word, but I just had no one that I could talk to about it. Mira, how about you?
Well, I think through my life, I met pockets of people, because when I was 15 or 17, I took a course called the Silva Method. It was called the Silva Mind Control Method. Then now it's the Silva Healing Method, I think. But, and it opened me up to new dimensions of awareness where we actually were practicing being psychic and accessing information from other realms. It's when I learned that I could do hands-on healing kind of thing. And those people were people that I could connect with, but most of them were a lot older. It was my grandmother who took me to that. So I was like 15 or 17 years old, and here I had this exposure to magic and wonder, and really not a whole lot of people to converse with around it. And then when I was in my 30s, that's when I went and got trained in NLP, neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, and something called One Brain. And I was meeting these people that were spiritually oriented, but they were from all over the world. It wasn't a community. So I kept getting tastes of people. And I think really that when it changed for me is when I started getting more confident in just saying, you know what, this is it. You know, I'm cool. Just I'm fine without anybody else to rely on. And I had been learning that through my life. But when as I've gained more confidence in myself, then I was able to find more people that were healthy. Let's say that, you know, because a lot of us, and I certainly I was very wounded. I was a very wounded person. And I really, truly have spent my life healing myself and healing my family. And I think a lot of us go through that. I mean, our pain is where our compassion and our ability to work with others comes from, right?
Yeah, we have to heal that emotional impact. It's there, and that's where our triggers come from. If we haven't dealt with those emotions, they're there, they're in there in our subconscious. And so then when something comes up and we're reacting to it, that's how we get into that state of just yuck.
Definitely.
You know, the people who, you know, even now, you know, that I'm coaching, the ones who are the most reluctant to come out, so to speak. So we've had so many different ways of coming out, and now we're talking about coming out spiritually. You know, but those who are most reluctant are the ones who have found themselves, as you say, just going numb, being comfortably numb. I love the term comfortably numb because that puts you into denial, where you get into a routine. You don't even realize that you're numb or that you're in denial. And I said, people who are in denial, so they deny they're in denial, right? But then that really leads to depression. I saw something just the other day that the suicide rate has just skyrocketed in the last 20 years, and I've known a couple of people who succumbed to that. But those are the consequences of not being able to be your authentic self. Because your authenticity and your purpose, which is what's impelling you to seek these your heart's desire and and your truth, it's always knocking on your door. It will knock on your door for an entire lifetime, unless you become numb, or unless you go ahead and seek and fulfill your purpose spiritually.
Yeah,
For sure. What do you say, Liz?
well, I was thinking as you're talking, Sheila, about that, that path that you're being called to, is that I think it's the divine within you calling you home, reminding you. And so whatever those wounds are, and we're all wounded, that's the thing that I think sometimes we don't realize, is we think, we're unique in that way. And we don't recognize that even people who don't look like they're wounded have been wounded. And as Sheila said, either they've worked through it or they're numbing it and they're covering it up with other things. And what that could be work, that could be relationships, that could be gambling, sex, drinking, whatever it is. But I feel like that call is always calling us home to our divinity, to what's true for us. And yes, as Sheila said, unless we answer that call, it's like it's a thirst, it's a hunger in us. And when we do go down that path, it can be challenging because we do realize we're going to have to face some of the darkness, some of our shadow self, as they say. But freedom is on the other side of that. And so if we're willing to take that risk, we know that there's goodness on the other side. And when you find others that will take that journey with you, it makes it more enjoyable and easier.
I find that it's so much easier now. I think that our culture has transformed so profoundly. I went vegetarian for the first time when I was 15. And then people thought vegetarian was iceberg lettuce and gray overcooked string beans. That's what was available for vegetarian food. And look at, in the space of 40 years or so, 40, 50 years, look at, yoga is mainstream. Vegetarian and even veganism is very, very, very common. You have fast food outlets serving vegetarian, vegan beef or, vegan meat. The conversation about spirituality and angels, Terry, you must be in bliss to know that you have piles of people that can not only relate, but what I found, I think my original tribe was a tribe I found through books, because I could find books about life after death. I could find books about awakened consciousness, and that stimulated me. I never really made this connection before, but I've always been a bookworm, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's where it originated, because that's where I found my sense of communion with others and connection.
Yeah, just curious, are all of us bookworms? Because reading, I could never get enough of books.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I used to carry books instead of dolls. My mother was a doll collector. She would give me dolls, and I'd put them down and carry them around. But it's so interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking, as you're talking about being able to find your tribe through books, because before the internet, that's what we had was, especially if you were in a town that didn't have progressive groups, or if you were just too young, which is many people's experience. But now we have here we are live on internet. Now we have the entire globe. So it's so much easier to find your tribe now, no matter, what sort of spirituality, you're going to be able to find people. And it is interesting because the advent of books, I mean, think back 20 or 30 years ago when spiritual books were coming out on Oprah was on the bandwagon, and now it's much more about speaking to people the way that we are now and having these conversations than it is about books. Mm-hmm. Or now we have, sort of the shorter blogs that people, where we're relating. But the other piece of that is that we're all evolving, even spiritually, at such a, sort of faster pace that's why blogs are speaking to people rather than these big tombs of spiritual principles. Those will always resonate, but it's like, in this day and age, what we're attracted to, at least for this period of time now, this sort of era, if you will, is, just picking up those ideas because we have the freedom to bring these different ideas together in the picture that we are creating for ourselves. We don't have to subscribe that set of 10 principles or this set of 100 principles. We can pick and choose what feels right for us, and we can create our own sort of brand of spirituality.
Yeah, a la carte spirituality.
It doesn't work for a lot of people, but everybody is where they are, and there's value in all of it. So we've always had the need for a tribe since ancient times, but it's now that we have this freedom of thought, it's about expanding and learning and growing, and it's about our collective growth. And where before we may have been ostracized, at this point we can be leaders.
And we are.
Spirituality.
And I think that's a great segue to say that we're not alone in that, and we're not unique in that capability. Really, one of our intentions out of this gathering and sharing it is to empower others to recognize that they too can come into their full expression and their leadership. And it's not like it's special. It's special in that it's unique to us or the individuals that do it, but it's not like it's a superpower to express it, right? We all have access to it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the influence of, you started addressing it, Sheila, but the influence of the internet and social media on the ability to find an authentic tribe?
I think the potential is there, but I also think you have to be kind of careful, because the question is, are people on social media being authentic? So some maybe, but others may still be just using the facade that they've always used, and now they can just blast it out farther. So I do think you need to be careful, but you also, if you particularly for women, we trust our gut. We listen to our intuition. So if you can do that and tune into that, you can get a sense of, are these individuals, is this really feel good to me? Is this really a safe place for me? But I do think, you take it slowly. You take it a step at a time, and you engage with them in ways that are a little bit deeper than just, tweaked here and there. But I don't know. I would, say that you need to be a bit cautious.
Discerning.
Discernment. That was the word.
Yeah. But also, we have good old Google. So if in doubt, Google, and just, we can dig to the bottom of anything now. We can do that research. Before we had the books, like we talked about, what we could find in books. But now we can find out anything about anybody, pretty much.
And that brings up the need for caution.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm saying if you're hearing in your gut something's a little off, this just isn't really resonating here, you can always look, and if not, then just walk away. But just really do be discerning.
But the thing is too that you don't necessarily get positive and accurate information about everything. So we all know this is the era of fake news too. So it really is a matter of personal discernment, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's true even with spiritual practices. What resonates with you? And what are you drawn to? And that's the beauty we were talking about, spirituality. We can, in many ways, create our own spirituality. And we can blend various practices, whether it's walks in nature or journaling or meditation, yoga, qigong, whatever it is. But you can use those practices to find deep within yourself what resonates, what you're drawn to, what's helping you in your growth and transformation. And those are the communities then that you can become part of. I love taking online courses around things that interest me. Like I was in a qigong course right now in one for the divine feminine. But what I love is the communities then that are created from there. That is a great way to interact with individuals who have a similar interest, and really you can build relationships from there. So it feels a little bit safer than just being out wherever. But that's what I've found really, really effective.
And remember that, discernment is what has opened the door for our own progression and growth as well in the first place.
Right.
Because we have all been discerning about where it was that we came from. We've been discerning about the beliefs and the values that we were taught. If we hadn't been, we'd still be there. We'd still be there. So discernment, from about the past and the future, is really where you can find the balance.
I know for me, growing up, I was really hungry for a sense of belonging. I did not have a solid sense of self-esteem, and I was really grasping. And I encountered several different organizations that people have called cults.
Mm.
And I engaged with several different groups at different times to have an experience of it. And initially it seemed really positive for me. And at one point I experienced, in a particular circumstance, I experienced a moment when there was a rift, like where it just deeply inside said no, and that was then I was out of there. But the thing is, I think it's really important to be able to entertain different things that call to you, even if there's a lot of public controversy over it, and to be able to be willing to follow your heart. Now, it's hard in those circumstances because so much of that is doublespeak that kind of entraps you. I think this is a really interesting thing to explore. Do you guys have experience with any of that?
Well, I learned early on that one of the hallmarks or the definitions of a cult is how do they treat you when you leave or when you decide that you want to leave. So if you can walk away and everyone says, bless your path ahead and have a wonderful life, then it probably wasn't that bad of a place. But if the tribe is wanting things of you, or they're trying to control you, obviously. But even there are even current groups that are known to be sort of on the front page of current spirituality, that are not so happy, when you leave, and are not so nice in subtle ways. But that paradigm, still exists. And using your senses, using your heart, really looking for balance and compassion and the ability to grow. So again, organizations or tribes or people who can be open to your ideas. They don't have to adopt them, just like you don't have to adopt theirs. But as long as they can be open. I mean, I am not particularly attracted to individuals or groups who say it must be this way. This is how it is, because I don't believe in answers in the first place. I believe in evolution, that we're always evolving. We're evolving spiritually all the time. The more we learn, the more we learn. The more we grow, the more we grow. And so, so any any tenant that says it must be like this is one that I know right away is not my tribe.
Yeah. Or if it's just because I said so.
Yeah.
Well,
I used to say that to my daughter, actually. But yeah, when we're told to do something and there's that restriction, that limitation, I think that's where we start to look at, okay, is this not fitting in with my belief of things? Because as a spiritual being, we're unlimited. So when somebody tries to put us in a box and say, these are your boundaries, these are your limits, and don't go beyond them, then we start to question. And I always look at it as, am I in alignment? Here's my energy level. Is that energy level the same as mine? Oops, there's my hands. Or am I like up here and that energy is running down here? So we feel into our gut, like we talked about before, and we ask those questions. Just go inside and ask the questions. Am I really in alignment with what this is that I am taking part in? Or is it time for me to step away and say, that's not for me? And we use that barometer on our gut a lot of times, don't we, ladies?
for sure, for sure. Liz, do you want to chime in on this?
Well, what I was thinking was how, so what started me exploring outside of the religion that I was grew up with was actually a priest who was very open to exploring things beyond Catholicism, which is where I grew up. And he would introduce us to all sorts of things. We would read books. We would always read books, but there were things like how would Confucius ask for a raise, or the Zen teachings of Jesus, and things like that. And I trusted him very much. And I loved that he was exploring things outside of the boundaries. And what I found, and so that started in my early 20s, and it just has continued through my life. And what I've found as I've explored other religions and other forms of spirituality is that there is a common, in where it's true, there's a common space of love, and you can feel it. There is a respect for the human being and their divinity. And so I just know that when I'm exploring something, if it resonates and if it feels true to me, that I can trust it. And I love the fact that I don't just find it in one place. I find it in so many different places. That's what I think ties us together as a humanity. And so my experience, I haven't had experience with negative, things that I felt were really not good for me or unhealthy. But I have had experience of just exploring a variety of different things that are out there and finding my own truth from that, which I just love.
That's beautiful. And I think that that's what I was looking for too. I saw all these different religions, and they had, in many cases, very conflicting notions of how things were. And what I was looking for was the commonality between them. And you just articulated that beautifully. If there's the love there, that's a great place to be. I think so many of us get indoctrinated without knowing it, because we are taught this is how it is. We are taught that, and we are not, it doesn't occur as a place to question. And so that's when people can experience a crisis of identity too, right?
Yeah.
Is going through that.
I remember hearing, this would have been probably in my 30s or 40s, when a group of friends were starting to refer to our religion as the one true faith. And that struck me so negatively because it felt incredibly hypocritical to me. And I didn't understand how someone could believe that there was one true faith and nothing else, could possibly be real. And so that hit me from a gut. You know, you hear it sometimes the other way. When you hear something negative, you think, that's not truth for me. I just don't believe that. So yeah, it's an interesting journey for sure.
And you know, and when something doesn't feel right, there's a reason.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason for it. The you know, hypocritical or contradictory kinds of things that you come across. You know, I'm somebody who, from the youngest age, I question those things, not harshly, but very genuinely, and I, you know, spent a lifetime trying to understand, well, you know, where's the conflict in this? You know, why is there a conflict in this? You know, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, even when, you know, all my brothers were playing sports, and, you know, and they knelt down to pray for the annihilation of the other team so that they could win. And I just thought, you know, I mean, and so, you know, I'm a little kid, and I would ask the adults, you know, isn't that, you know, sort of contrary to, you know, that we want, you know, we want well-being for everyone. You know, I understood that competition could bring out the best of our human skills. It could really help us grow and develop skills, but yeah, but one against the other, and those sort of things. And so I ran into those kinds of principles ever since. And I think, you know, questioning is very healthy, very healthy.
Oops. And there's the other bricks.
It's raining. It looks like it's kind of raining behind you.
Yeah, well, we all have green screens, and my green screen fell down, and I have these
Thankfully,
bricks.
that's what's behind there. It could have been much worse.
That's true. So, moving on. One of the things that we've been talking about is discernment.
Yeah.
And when for myself, when I was in not a great way, I was really needy, I was really unhappy, I was really searching, and it left me in a position where my discernment wasn't as pure as it is at this time, because I didn't have the balance. Right? So how do we contend with, you know, we're trying to trust our guts, but if we don't trust ourselves, what do we do? Where do we go from there? Terry, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to really do that inner work, Mira. We have to do the deep dive and look at our patterns. And once we see the pattern, then we can say, okay, where did that come from? And we can start looking at our belief system. You know, you and I both, we had similar experiences growing up where we were isolated, and, you know, we were the odd one. So let's look at how people taught us, and then what we do that point on is going to be patterned around that. So we're always going to be trying to people please, or trying to make ourselves, you know, the square fit into the round hole. We're always going to be looking for that niche where we're going to fit in. So once we do that deep dive and we start seeing those patterns, we can do this in meditation. We can really look at how our life is going and ask, you know, we can always ask, help me to see, help me to clarify this. Because the more we look at it and really understand ourselves better, that's when we start to move out of those old patterns and let those old tapes just go. It's like, I don't need you anymore. You don't have to tell me I'm weird anymore. I already know I'm weird. But it's finding ourselves first, and then we can fit in wherever it is. But we can't, as long as those old tapes are still telling us, you're no good, you're not worthy, you're not enough. You know, you're just somebody to be not seen, not heard, and just stay over there and do your thing all by yourself. So it took a lot of work for me. It took really serious inner work, and it was not fun, let me tell you.
Right.
It wasn't fun at all, but it was definitely worth it to do that inner work.
Well, you hit on an important point, and that is that the path of spiritual awakening or set personal evolution is not for sissies.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So
And on the other hand, along those lines too, you might find a tribe that is very safe and very balanced, and you might feel you really compelled to be with them because they do bring safety and security, and that can be a wonderful thing. But if you're in that situation and you're still feeling troubled in your soul, or feeling that there's more exploration that you want to do that you're not being given the opportunity to because it is so safe, right? That that the safety is keeping everything quelled and secure, but the growth isn't happening. That still could be a reason for you to continue to explore and search.
Yeah.
what do you think, Liz?
I absolutely agree. I think, when you think about your best friendships in life, at least for me, they're the women who have loved me unconditionally, but have also challenged my growth and transformation. And I hope I do the same for them. People who just haven't changed in 20 or 30 years. They're doing the same darn thing. And it is safe and it is comfortable, but there's no growth, there's no change, there's no expansion, there's no living on the edge, which is, why we call it the broader edge. And so we're getting some feedback here, but yeah, I think when we're looking for a tribe, we want a tribe that is there to support and love us, but also to encourage and support us as we become our best and brightest and biggest self, because that's really what we're here to do. We're here to grow our soul. I mean, our soul came here for a purpose. It wants to grow. It wants to live fully, and it takes risk to pursue that growth. But that's why we're here.
You bring up a really good point, and that is that some people who haven't changed for 20 years or 25 years, and the truth is that we may not have the same tribe all our lives.
That's right.
In fact, it's likely that if we're growing, that we won't, right?
And that's challenging. That can be really, really hard.
Yeah. It's a passage of fire, really, because it can be heartbreaking to be losing friendships. I've had series of periods in my life where friends fell away, either because I pruned them or they pruned me as I was changing. But the thing is, it's necessary as you evolve to find the tribe that's going to support you and support your evolution and expansion. And as people grow, they're oftentimes expanding beyond the group, and the group tries to crush him, right? I'm sure you guys have all experienced that in some way or another. Yeah.
I've had many spiritual groups along the decades. Even on an open spiritual path, it does keep shifting and changing, and some of those threads still remain. In fact, a great many of them do, as I honor their decisions to stay where they are, and being open to wherever they are, even if that tribe is not working for you anymore, or even if others have closed you out. Being open to where they are is what we all want. So we model for others, that saying, we teach people how to treat us as well. But as we do step out, we give others permission to do the same, because there are many people who would love to step out who just don't have the courage. I mean, my question to them is, how unfulfilled do you want to be? that's the question that you can ask yourself. How unfulfilled? Because we're really talking about spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah.
So if you feel stuck, or you feel that you just, you're afraid to leave, and there's always degrees. It doesn't have to be a total exit. I'm out of here. There are many degrees of this. There is a lot of yes and not just a yes or a no. But the question is, how unfulfilled do you want to be? And if you decide that you need more fulfillment, and you can, keep that tribe or keep parts of that tribe, that's fine too. It all ends up working itself out as long as you keep your own true north in front of you. And then you end up where you want to be. If there are people who are left behind, then perhaps they weren't meant to be, on your path. And you might be the one that's been left behind. Both.
And I love that question, Sheila.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm going to start using that.
That's a good one. That's a powerful question.
Yeah. Because time does roll on in our lives, as we all are very well aware. Time really flies. So chop.
Well, and it takes a lot of courage to
Yeah.
leave a group. There's social pressure, there's identity shifting, and it can be a real trigger for all kinds of insecurities too.
Yeah.
So listen, Terry, what's your take on that?
I was going to say, yeah, it can be incredibly lonely, because I mean, if you haven't found yet that next tribe, it can be really lonely. But I think the other place that it can be incredibly challenging is with your family of origin. And I'm grateful to say that my family of origin has supported my growth, but that is not always the case. That can be a really, really challenging place when you know that what you've grown up with, or the life that was given to you, is not the life that you want going forward. That can be a really, really tough place to be. But it goes back to the question that Sheila said, how fulfilled do you want to be? I mean, whose life are you living? Whose story are you writing? And the other thing I think that's really interesting is when you start to think that the patterns that you're willing to break, perhaps there are long-standing traditions in your family with your ancestors that are not, that are either dysfunctional or toxic or just unhealthy. Your willingness to break those patterns, they say, not only breaks it for generations to come, but generations before. So that willingness to say, no more. I'm not going to live this way. I don't want my children and grandchildren to live this way, and I'm willing to break this pattern for all time. That is powerful. That's when you're stepping into your purpose.
Super powerful. What do you think, Terry?
Absolutely. And I've stepped away from many times from the tribe, the group that I was connected with. But what we have to realize is that we are constantly changing. Every day we have more experiences, we have more things that we're learning, that we're researching and finding, and that causes us then to examine ourselves more. So we're growing, and that tribe that you're with, you may outgrow the tribe. You may not be in alignment with them anymore. And we just always have to ask ourselves, am I in alignment with what's going on in that tribe I'm in? Or do I need to just step away? And it's perfectly okay to step away. It may be difficult, and for sure, and you might get some flack from the tribe, but you have to honor yourself.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors is Lisa Nichols. I absolutely love her. I don't know if you all are familiar with her, but she talks about the different kinds of relationships, and that some relationships are for a purpose, some relationships are a lifetime relationship, and some you just come together to co-create something. So we have to look at that too. A tribe is a relationship. You're in a relationship with those people, whether you're just communicating or you're socializing, whatever it is. So you may be in that tribe just for a season. You may be there to teach them something, and then it's time for you to move on, or you're learning from them, and then it's time to move on. So I don't think that going away or stepping away is a bad thing. It's just where we go. It's that transition that we make into finding our own path and finding what's going to be there in our purpose, our life's purpose, as we go down that road.
We can see a pattern, in marriages too, as we sort of look at marriages over the decades. Speaking of transitional tribes, Terry, that you come together at perhaps at a young period of your life. That kind of serves one purpose, and kind of getting your roots together. Having children can be another very beautiful, fulfilling, and fulfilled purpose. And I went through that myself. We were together for the most purposeful reasons, and it worked out very well for that period of time. And then it was time for both of us to move on. But it's not that it was wrong, or that it shouldn't have happened, or that it that it was, or that it was. In fact, there was just loads of growth that came out of it. And we're seeing that pattern in marriages. If we sort of look at the statistics along the way as well.
It's interesting that you're talking about marriage, because along with the marriage comes a circle of friends. And people, when a marriage breaks up, the tribe separates and takes sides, and that can be a very disorienting thing as well for people. So we're almost at the top of the hour, ladies. I don't know where the time went. Do you? Does anybody have something to say to sort of wrap this thing up before we make some announcements and whatnot?
I would love to say one other thing as I'm listening to all of you. I feel like when it comes down to it, what we're talking about, the ability to find your tribe and follow your soul's purpose, comes down to self-love. You have to, it's something that I don't think we're taught. And I would say particularly as women, love ourselves first. And it can feel selfish. It can feel wrong. You can feel guilty. But the reality is, if we're willing to love ourselves, then we would want nothing less. If you think about how you love someone else and what you want for them, you want the best for them. If you want the best for yourself, then you want to put yourself in situations where you're surrounded by people who love you, where your soul's purpose, where you can fully be yourself authentically, and where your soul's purpose can be pursued. And so, that the healing that needs to happen is for us to heal the point that we love ourselves so much that we would never do anything to hurt us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I wanted to say what I noticed in my family, where I had been the butt of jokes and a lot of misunderstanding. And what I noticed is that as I became unapologetically myself, I was accepted.
Wow.
And the whole perception changed.
Wow. That's magnificent.
It's a big deal.
And that follows, that reminds me of, what I wanted to say was to honor your uniqueness. All the qualities that make you unique are a part of the bigger picture. They are a part of the grand design. It's all, your authenticity is your purpose and your mission. So honor your uniqueness, and you'll have the experience that Mira had. Others, as we honor ourselves, others will honor us more so.
Beautiful.
How we feel about ourselves is how they'll feel about us.
Terry?
That's right. We teach others how to treat us. We learn that later on in life. We don't know that as kids, but we do learn that. But I'd just like to say to everybody that was here watching us today, thank you. Thank you for supporting what we're doing, and to just be open. Just be open to possibility, Be like that little kid again, just in wonder and say, ooh, what's out there? What can I explore? What can I find as I'm looking for my tribe, as I'm looking for like-minded people that I can fit into? And don't limit yourself. Don't put any boundaries around you. Just be free and just be. That's what it takes. And once you get into that spirit and that aura of just being and not having to do to anything to please anybody else, you're going to attract people to you, because like attracts like. So when you're being authentic and you're being you, you're going to find your tribe.
And they will find you.
Absolutely.
And that's why our logo is EE. Just E. That is intentional. So.
And on that note, that's a perfect note to say to everybody, thank you so much for being with us. And we encourage you to look at the other amazing programming on Enlightened World Network. There are incredible shows. Terry Angel has several. And who knows what's evolving as far as other shows. Liz, do you have a show at this moment? There's something in the works for you. And Sheila, where are you?
I have a number of shows in the works, but nothing. I'm doing a lot of guest speaking, a lot of guest podcasting, and a lot of development.
So keep an eye out for these faces, everybody. We've got lots to share, lots of love to share and compassion, and we're so glad to have you with us. Gratitude and a big shout out to Ruth Anderson for creating Enlightened World Network. And we hope that you will join us here next 2 weeks from now on Enlightened World Network at 5 p.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, please share this with folks that you think would benefit from this conversation or for whom it might resonate, and just join us. Oh, we started a Facebook page. So find us on Facebook, The Broader Edge, and engage with us in conversation. We'd love to have you be part of an expanding community. So thanks for being with us.
And just to entice you, the topic of our next show is going to be liminal space. The liminal space is the space betwixt and between, when something has ended, but what's to come is not yet there. And it's something that we are all experiencing individually during this COVID crisis or COVID challenge, but also collectively. So we think it's going to be a really interesting conversation to explore this with you.
And of course, Liz is going to be hosting it.
I will. I'm hosting next time.
So if you go to our Facebook group called The Broader Edge, we'd love your comments. We had several comments from the audience today, and they loved the discussion that we had. So if you were watching this, we'd love to have you go give us some feedback on that group. Just come in and tell us what you think and give us your feedback. We would love that.
And tell us what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tell us what you want to talk about. We'd love to hear, and we'd love to have that conversation with you.
For sure. So bye from all of us.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Broader Edge. Our mission is to empower and engage you in shaping our tomorrow, because your impact matters. Help us spread the word by liking and sharing on social media. Be sure to join us on alternate Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on Enlightened World Network for candid conversations that envision a new future. The information, views and opinions expressed by The Broader Edge co-hosts, guests and associates are intended to inspire and empower you and should not be construed as medical, psychological, financial or legal advice.
Still recording?
We are on the air, and yes, I'm stopping